Welcome to the High-End Society. Today we are visiting the Transrotor company to see exactly where they craft their legendary record players. Standing right here behind me is the impressive facility at the address where the navigation system has led me for today's tour. But as we can see, no big company at all, or maybe there is. Let's just take a quick look right inside. Jochen, it has been more than 50 years since you founded the legendary company Transrotor. Could you tell us how it all began back then? And when exactly did you establish the company?
Back in 1971, I was able to secure the agency for Transcriptor turntables. That was a renowned English company where a man named David Gammon had designed a magnificent turntable, and I was eventually able to successfully sell it throughout Germany. And all of a sudden, you could say it took off. And then I also successfully built up a very strong and highly reliable dealer network throughout Germany.
And how did the distribution network continue from there? How did Transrotor then really become well known across Germany?
At some point, I thought about building something myself. And that's exactly when the company Grundig came to my aid. They wanted me to have a specialized turntable manufactured for them that was designed specifically for Grundig. And then I built the very first innovative self-developed turntable that perfectly matched the Grundig system. I personally drove to Firth with it and demonstrated it to the gentlemen of the management there. They looked at it carefully and said, "Yes, we'll do that." But now I didn't want to do it just exclusively for Grundig, but also for myself as well. And then we reached an agreement. We'd build this device for Grundig. Grundig can have it. And I'd also sell it to my dealers who were more pure hi-fi studios. And that continued to operate consistently for many years. It worked absolutely flawlessly, you know. And building upon that foundation, I then engineered and developed several innovative new turntables that looked a bit like early record-cutting machines, and it was often the case that I had an idea for the exterior, but didn't really feel like drawing it. So Mr. Hornung did it, and that's been going on for, let's say, 35, 38 years now.
Transrotor turntables are distinctly characterized by their very unique and recognizable design. I've learned that you're a trained mechanical engineer. How did you go about creating such a unique design? And how has it continuously evolved throughout the years?
Well, I became more interested in the intricate world of turntable technology. And then I thought, if a turntable has a large chassis, it's likely to resonate when the music is loud. And we don't want that at all. We don't want the turntable to interfere with the volume of the speakers. And I continued designing in that specific direction so that the turntables no longer looked like they used to, like a simple closed unit with a cover on top, and that's it. Instead, I came up with a wide variety of designs, but always with the aim of ensuring that the turntable itself would not be vibrantly stimulated by the speakers. We once engineered and developed a specialized industrial machine called Fat Bob. Lots of metal, very heavy. We built them for a long time and sold them for a long time, but not in huge quantities. Some things turn out to be a successful design, and they sell quite well. And others, well, good grief, you make 10 or 20 of them, and that's it, right? I have no problem with that at all, having designed something that doesn't really catch on. We designed at least 40 different models, and of those, 30 were actually built in significant numbers.
Over the course of the past several decades, our Transrotor has also developed and introduced several groundbreaking technical innovations, such as the specialized TMD bearing. How did that come about?
Well, you can actually accomplish many beneficial things with the turntable drive. We invented a very special type of drive. We divided the bearing in the record player into two parts. There is a lower disc, which the electric motor drives via a belt, and it is securely fitted with a series of individual magnets, sometimes more, sometimes less, and the upper part is mounted on one or two ball bearings. So the two are mounted so that they can rotate against each other. Then magnets are placed between the two parts, and when these magnets are synchronized and aligned, the lower disc then begins to drive the upper disc along with it. And that clearly demonstrates and highlights the significant difference from other types of drive systems.
Media consumption changes over the course of years and decades. There was also a time when vinyl wasn't in such demand and the CD was booming. What makes you confident over all these years to keep sticking with the record so innovatively and strongly?
I simply continued to persevere and dedicated our efforts to a small circle of vinyl record enthusiasts. For us, being a small company with 15 people, that was quite sufficient to sustain us. And with that, we naturally also, with some compromises, the time when records basically didn't exist anymore, at least not on a broad scale, we were able to survive, simply because none of the big players were around anymore.
At Transrotor, not only is Jochen Reke employed, but also your son Dirk. What is his position and how is it developing?
Well, I was 64 years old, roughly. At that particular point in my life, I thought to myself, eventually you will definitely have to hand over the entire company. And I had always had it in the very back of my mind to ask Dirk if he would be interested. He was at home in the commercial sector and was also very successful there. And at some point I asked Dirk directly, would you do it? And it's not that easy, working together as father and son. And in the end, Dirk said, okay, I'll do it. Actually, today it's like this. Now I'm 84. I'm happy to still keep an eye on things in the company. And I can now observe everything unfolding beautifully from the sidelines. And I am, with the current progress and development as it is going now, also with Dirk and with the other professional colleagues, very satisfied. Knock on wood.
Dirk, what was your official start at the Transrotor company like? And when exactly was that?
It's been almost exactly 20 years now since I've been working here permanently, with roles and so on and so forth. But that's just how it is when you have a family business. Then it's a daily topic at lunch. So you talk about the company, and I was always at all the trade fairs. I worked there too, and had jobs here at the company, soldering power supplies and things like that, even as a teenager, alongside school. But I've been here permanently for 20 years now.
That actually brings us to the question, what is your area of responsibility now at the Transrotor company?
Well, as the title says, management, right? So that's the thing. It just happened that way. When I started, I took care of the export business. So I expanded or built it up, depending on how you define it. And then it was a kind of smooth transition with my father. So we never had a set date, like, son, now all this is yours. Now you're in charge. But it just happened that way.
Regarding the topic of export, Transrotor is a long-standing and traditional German manufacturing company. What is the current situation with sales here in Germany? And the market share overseas or in other countries?
Especially for a German high-end company, we have a fairly large share of business in Germany, still from turnover, so over 40%, 46, 47%. And that has also been stable for a long time. So it has also grown along with the growth of the company. I think that's a good sign. So if you have a significant level of success in your home country, that also yields substantial benefits in your international business ventures then, of course.
And what is the total number of employees that you presently employ at your company?
Altogether, we are 14 now, partly part-time staff, but 14 people who work here.
All the development work is undoubtedly performed in-house. What exactly does all of that include?
Yeah, so any kind of design, meaning the idea, discussing the idea, then the final design, so the drawing that's then released, and everything that involves finishing, especially surface treatment, we do that here in-house. And the completely raw and unfinished components, like the unpolished platter, for example, we have those made by specialists who are all in the immediate local area, which is a significant strategic advantage because you can then go to the respective specialist for the corresponding parts and don't have to use your own milling machine or make any compromises because you can't get all the shapes exactly right. You can go to the specialized companies for each individual part.
So that means a transrotor is quite a typical and classic example, made in Germany, correct?
Correct. So made in Germany is a buzzword that actually holds very true in our case. Another buzzword that's used very excessively is the word manufactory. Well, I was at the Fry factory at the station recently and all, but with us, it's actually true. A very classic craft business in cooperation with several suppliers, you know.
Now, Transrotor is famous for precision mechanics, and certainly the topic of quality assurance is also a very important one there. How should I visualize that? How do you inspect and verify the specific parts that are supplied to you? What does quality assurance look like in your company?
Yes, that plays a very big role because besides the good sound and technology, we're famous for the good looks and the great surface quality of our devices. And yes, it's naturally incredibly important that it's checked regularly, that the manufacturing is right, and we're also in contact with our suppliers. That's another advantage, that they're all located here in the area. So if we were getting parts from China, you couldn't just drive over and show them, here, this part needs to be reworked. And as far as quality assurance is concerned, we're proud of how it works here, because every single person who works here has the final quality in mind.
Now, Transrotor has been in business for almost half a century for a remarkable span of 50 years. There are certainly a great many reliable turntables that have been playing for some years now with satisfied long-term customers. What about the topic of service, especially for such old classics?
Service is a significant and important priority at Transrotor because the devices have been in active operation since 1970 or 1971, and we can effectively bring all devices that come to us, even from that very old time, back to a pristine, completely new condition. Even if someone, for example, has a device from the 80s, we can currently install current bearings there or even partially replace old motors that no longer exist with new motors. The power supplies today are much better than before. They also work with the very old devices, things like that.
Besides turntables, I think tonearms are also a very important topic for you, right?
We decided a few years ago to bring our own line of tonearms to the market. And that was a one-year phase that it took to get it to the point where we were finally satisfied with it. We wanted to do it like this. We wanted to make a real statement first and build a tonearm that's as good as we can make it, and then consider whether to build cheaper versions of it. But first, set a standard for ourselves. And yeah, that involved a lot of work. And not just with the actual planning and design and idea, but also what comes after that. Namely, especially with the tonearm. It's very important to observe the right tolerances and adjust the tonearm so that it doesn't move too easily, but also isn't too stiffly guided and things like that. But we reached a very good result after this 1 year of work. We're a bit proud of that.
One can already see that you have a very broad product portfolio across different price ranges. What's next for Transrotor? Do you want to occupy new price ranges, upwards or downwards? Or how can I imagine the future?
As you say, we do serve a very wide portfolio. It basically goes from nearly 3,000 euros to open-ended for us. And that's the range we move in. And so what I'm often asked is, do you want to make cheaper devices at some point? So that's a regular question. And I think no. We have our special area. We're good at that. And all the people who work here are good, as well as our suppliers. So this whole structure, and we're staying there.
Now we are in the Tonearm production at the Transrotor company, and sitting with me is Mr. Putz, the specialist for this area of responsibility. What does that look like? How should I imagine it? How was a Tonearm for Transrotor manufactured here?
Well, we receive the finished parts from the turn-in shop, perform a quality control check, might have to remove a burr or two, recut a thread here and there, and then it's basically decided which direction it will take. On one hand, we offer the option of anodized coating, which is hard anodizing, and on the other hand, we have electroplating, and we then have to decide how the batches are distributed.
Now, the supplier companies here are all located within this region. You just mentioned that some of the components naturally have to be checked here again individually for quality, and that actually brings us to the topic of quality assurance upon delivery. What standards do you set? Exactly how much waste material is there, for example?
Yes, well, with the pre-manufactured parts from the turning shop, we have almost no scrap. Break time equals 0.5s/. Basically, they are all of the same quality. They are produced in sets of 50 or 100, and one part is just like any other.
Now, these are all precision components. Just how significant to the overall audio quality are such tolerances for the Tonearm for the final completed product?
Tolerances are very critical. So we maintain, for fitting parts, that is, for parts that are subject to a fit in the Tonearm, tolerances of 2 to 500ths of a millimeter. And even more critical, or even more important, is in the bearing area.
Mm-hmm.
There, we are working in the thousandths of a millimeter range.
So it's actually a constant process of quality assurance and also quality inspection that takes place there.
That's exactly how it is, yes.
Regarding the internal wiring of such a Tonearm or Tonearm tube, I've learned that it's also produced here at Transrotor itself in-house ultimately.
As a matter of fact, it is currently the case that here in-house there is essentially only one individual, a colleague of mine, is able to solder this wiring.
Mm-hmm.
We work on TN9 with pure silver wiring, and here it's the case that break time equals 0.5s/. The strand basically has the diameter of a single human hair. But it consists of 7 strands within itself, and it's a very delicate web, basically, and only that colleague is able to process and solder it. She has consistently been doing that for many years now.
That's a very, very high degree of specialization. I'm just learning. And if I look behind me at the shelf, I see an incredible number of individual components that make up such a Tonearm. We just talked about the TA9. How many individual parts does it actually consist of?
The TA9 consists of about 141 individual parts, and then the internal wiring would be added. We'd have to ask our colleague about that.
I'm imagining it to be very elaborate right now. When you think about one colleague soldering it, and you ultimately producing and assembling the Tonearm here, how much time should I mentally budget for such a Tonearm to be created in your hands?
Yes, well, we have to calculate a time expenditure of 1 to 2 days. The refined Tonearms, meaning with gold or chrome or ruthenium coating, need about 2 days of pre- and post-processing time.
I also heard that you were also involved in the development. Is that correct?
That is correct in that sense. However, my share of development is relatively modest and small. Ultimately, in the end, I contributed to bringing the anti-skating from theory into practice. We have the operating principle of magnetism here, unlike other manufacturers who sometimes work with thread or with springs. And finding the exact right combination of those powerful repelling magnets, there actually took an entire week of dedicated effort and constant testing, just to finally find the perfect right combination for the project.
Who is responsible for the main development of the Tonearm?
The main development of the Tonearm was carried out by our designer, Mr. Lars Hornung.
As I've learned from your colleague, the esteemed Mr. Putz, you're not only personally involved in production, but you're also very deeply and extensively involved in the development of the Tonearms and also very much in the turntables.
Yes, that's actually a major part of my job, taking on the design and construction of Tonearms and turntables. In the beginning, it was all manual work, and Jochen Recke was the one doing the development. And over the years, I've taken that over quite independently. Although we still collaborate very closely together and keep one another fully updated on every single development.
How should I imagine this kind of collaboration? During development, one person draws, the other constructs. Or how does it work?
Well, it basically works like this. You think about what you want to build. What does the market need? What does the company need? What do we want to do? Developments usually start after the high-end show when we talk about, okay, what are we doing next year? Then we discuss, okay, maybe we should have a device in this or that price segment. What should it be able to do roughly? What should it look like? We discuss that then, usually in a team of 3, where we can say, okay, it should be like this and that. And then you actually make a first sketch, a first pencil drawing, just very rough. This is what it might look like. This is how you could design and build something new. And then we talk about it again. Yeah, that would be the thing. And then the next step is to make a rough one-to-one drawing so that you have an approximate idea of the size and how it might look. And then, at some point, you make the actual technical drawing for it. It's also possible that we build styrofoam models to see, okay, this is what it will really look like. And then, in the machine shops, prototype parts are manufactured for the first time. You look at those again, too, and then you change them again. And then the first prototype is actually assembled from those parts.
If I take a completely normal Transrotor drive as an example, what kind of time frame are we talking about for a process like the one you just described?
Well, you could say roughly half a year, but that doesn't mean you're working on it the whole time. Rather, you have certain periods when you focus on it and work. And also times when you just leave it alone. But you can say the whole development up to the prototype construction. Sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the size. But you have to count on about half a year before you actually have the prototype.
Do you also handle the communication with the suppliers? And how does that work?
Yes, exactly. I do that too. I'm a master precision mechanic and mechanical engineer, so I can talk to the suppliers quite well, with all the turners and the millers. So I actually go there, sometimes for the new things, to discuss the parts with the turners and with the millers. And I also pick up the items and then check the quality assurance right there on the spot, actually. Once the items are here, they're then assembled. We usually still have to handle the items, polish and sand them. Then there's always some minor rework, also drilling or something. That's also done here in our workshop.
The availability of parts is not merely a matter of classic just-in-time delivery, but you surely have a certain inventory of pre-products here as well.
So for the standard units, we actually have a stock of 50 units. I should say for the smaller ones. And for the larger units, the really big ones, it's usually about 2 to 3 that we keep in stock. So we estimate what might always sell and what might always be in demand. You can't always say for sure 100%. Sometimes delivery times are a bit longer, but we generally try to deliver the items within 14 days. And we succeed in most cases.
That's a very, very strong statement to the market. 14-day delivery capability. That's an excellent value. How much do you look into alternatives or even new materials and new manufacturing technologies?
We have to. We've tried out quite a lot of plastics and metals. That's based on 50 years of experience now. The company has been around for about that long, so a lot has been tested, but we fundamentally consider what's possible in terms of manufacturing with every innovation. We're actually on it daily, thinking things through and looking online to see what possibilities are out there. Especially the 2 younger colleagues who always have good ideas, bringing in truly new things, and ensuring we don't get stuck in our ways.
Can you give me more examples where you adapted new technologies or a new technology mix very early on?
We've extensively explored the topic of sandwich construction, which involves the process of meticulously combining acrylates or plastics with various metallic components. We experimented with that quite a lot, very early on.
This is where the individual assemblies are completed into the finished turntable.
This is a room where mass production happens, though you can't really call it mass production here, because these turntables are very individual. So there are different tonearms, different cartridges, and different bearings almost everywhere. But this is where they're actually assembled. And then, once everything is set up and has run for 24 hours, then either I or a colleague will adjust the systems and the tonearms once more. They are measured and then we give the go-ahead. Okay, now it can be packed up. And then the whole thing, each turntable is packed individually, and then it's ready to go.
Yes, thank you very much for all this extensive information.
You're welcome.
And now we're going to take a look at how the topic of service is handled at Transrotor. I have Gerd Weichler with me today, who, as you may know, has had one model or another sitting right here on the table at Transrotor for many, many years now, always contributing his expertise. And who can certainly tell us a little bit about it. What can I actually still expect from a Transrotor in terms of service after all these many years? What needs to be done? What is recommended to be done to it?
Well, you can definitely only expect positive things. It's no problem at all to really refurbish these old devices, because even back then we didn't work much with plastic, or not at all, but with acrylic, with aluminum, with metal. And the surface can be worked on wonderfully so that you can really make the device brand new again. It's time consuming and costs a bit of money, but it's possible.
What that essentially means is, if I bring a 30-year-old vintage Transrotor here, for example, that has bearing damage, you can still restore it back to its original shape and repair it here.
Correct. That's no problem at all. Not all spare parts are always available, but you have to be resourceful and use certain tools. And then you can refurbish a lot of things and don't have to replace them or get something new.
Keyword, modification. The technology, the engineering has evolved. Can an older Transrotor turntable be brought up to a newer standard?
Not just like that. If there are only, let's say, 10 or at most 15 years in between, then it might work. But over the course of time, the bearings change. The current bearings are 2 or 3 times as large as the bearings from earlier times. Because especially with the device we have here, it's only a small 6mm axle. And if you see one of our TMD bearings, it has a diameter that you can't install there. It's not possible.
That means even if you could do it hypothetically, the turntable's originality would probably no longer be there.
Absolutely. That's right. Exactly that. So the value of the device doesn't get better or higher, but rather lower because it's no longer original.
If we now think about using a Transrotor at home every day, we listen to music with it for maybe 2 or 3 hours every day. What do you recommend to these customers? After what period of time should they think about a service? And if so, what should be done to the device?
Well, with the old devices, every 2 or 3 years, check if the oil bath is still clean and if there's enough oil in it. And as for the drive belt, okay, you have to replace it if it falls off or is torn. But you can maintain it by just pulling it through a cloth with pure alcohol for a moment and then rubbing it with talcum powder. Then it'll last at least twice as long.
Are there things that absolutely can't be repaired anymore, even with a Transrotor?
No, absolutely everything is possible.
So folks, that was our day at the Transrotor company located right here in Bergisches Land. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.